Welcome back to the annual report. Kenneth B. Inch here, where we go through the catalog album by album, era by era. Let's get into it. Michael Jackson is kicking off this discography deep dive into their historical moments throughout history. Um, On Get It Together, Norman Whitfield and Leon Ware helped the Jackson Five sound energized, current, and connected again. And then you had Dancing Machine that changed everything, and it didn't really reinvent the group, but it proved that they could make hits, where I think that it was almost a wrap for them. Today, uh, when we think about that song, we think about how inseparable it is from the robot dance and adding more to the Michael Jackson mythology. But it was just simply a final track on Get It Together, which I think is very, very interesting. On the surface, it's another solid Jackson 5 album filled with funk, boogie, soul music. Underneath, I think there's a another shift that's taking place. Let's go ahead and talk about the background of the album, as we always do before we get into the tracks. So, um, this album was released 6 months after Get It Together. Dancing Machine became a major hit. Remember, it was number 2 on the pop charts and number 1 on the R&B charts, and it was Billboard's 5th biggest song in 1974. The success of that record proved that the Jackson 5 still could compete and push Motown to double down on what had just worked, which is what they were known for. We're just going to repeat the same thing over and over again. Credit is due to producer Hal Davis, who came through. He was given complete creative control, and he was the one that ushered the Jackson 5 into this new sound, and he was back again with this one. The psychedelic edges of Norman Whitfield, it was largely kind of replaced with cleaner grooves, tighter arrangements, and a stronger emphasis on dance moves. Long before the music shifted into funk and disco, they were kind of right there. And I think with this group, their choreography and stage presence had already sort of demanded that they move in this direction. I think I mentioned that on Get It Together. These songs just was they were catching up to them. And one other thing I think that's interesting on here, you have like 3 Michael solo records on this album. Whatever you got, I want. You got wait, you what you don't know, and if I don't love you this way are the 3. The brothers are there, but these are pretty much Michael's solo records. Michael, right after this released, if I'm not mistaken, had an album drop called Forever Michael. Um, so I thought that that was interesting. So either way, Motown, after this song blew up, Dancing Machine, they realized that they had a hit on their hands. So what did they do? They put the album out with the same name as Dancing Machine to take advantage of its sort of, I don't want to say viral success because I don't think that's it. But if I could put that in present day, it's like it's a keyword that everybody's searching for. And everybody knew Dancing Machine. So when you go in the record store, you can be like, hey, I want Dance Machine. Well, they're probably going to give you the album instead of the single, right? So and it was such a hit that the demand for this would be up. So Get It Together was already out, but and people already bought Get It Together. As a matter of fact, people were probably buying Get It Together for Dancing Machine and got all of the other great records I pointed out in my last album discussion um, with that album. But this time it's like you have some newbies that are coming in that are late to the party that just heard it on the radio after it broke. And want that album, unbeknownst to them that it's on a completely other album. So anyway, but as great as that song is, there's another song on here that I think, is just as good. Well, I take that back. It's probably not just as good. I think Dance Machine is really, really tough to touch. But nevertheless, this is where we are. This is what we have. We have the Motown rushing the market, another album, and they pretty much kept the same pace, the same energy, the same sort of concept as they did with Get It Together because it worked so well. So why not try to double down on that? And that's exactly what they did. So let's get into it. The album is probably about 32 minutes long, um, which is good because you can really run this thing back to back to back to back. So nevertheless, when you think about that album, or you think about that song, actually, like, was that song really good enough for them to rush out and put out a whole other album built around that song? I think that's one of the questions we have to ask. Marvin Gaye did it. He did it before with one of his songs that kind of went. But and so again, it's a Motown thing, but well, we'll see. Let's see if the rest of the albums or the rest of the songs on this album really justify that. So let's get into it track by track. So we're gonna start with side one, where we have I Am Love, which is broken down into parts 1 and 2. I gave you guys a deep cut from Get It Together. I'm giving you guys another deep cut right now. It's the very first track on the album. Um, is I think one that may not be discussed a lot. It's not like I'm hanging around a lot of Jackson 5 circles either. So if it is, y'all tell me. But I ain't heard anybody talking about it, and I think that they should. I think this song is absolutely fantastic, and I'm putting it in the bucket list. I want to go as maybe a top 5 Jackson 5 song. If not that, it's a top 5 deep cut Jackson 5 song. Um, you know, I thought it was interesting opening this album with something that with a slow jam. There's this ballad part that starts in the beginning. You're talking about an album that was all energy. It was 100 miles and running, and then you start this album out with a ballad. It probably caught a little people. Probably caught people off guard. It definitely caught me off guard. But I think Jermaine Jackson was basically at this point was underrated. Um, once Michael became the biggest star in the world, history just kind of really relished everybody else to the background. But this is the album that'll remind you, and the last album, that Jermaine was that guy too. His opening performance on this song, I think, is patient. I think it's soulful. He has absolute control. He doesn't oversing. Remember, he used to do that in the past. He doesn't oversing here. He kind of let the melody do his thing, um, and it really adds to a lot of the emotional weight of the opening part of this song. And then here come Michael. Michael came through, and you immediately heard why he's Michael. And you immediately heard why Tremaine and everybody else are relegated to the background. And I ain't trying to shit on Tremaine. It's just it just feels different. But I think when he comes in, everything changes. It's a completely different song. You have Michael doing the high energy part 2 where everything turns into this funk groove, and Jermaine's doing the ballad part. The groove is tighter, the energy goes up, and part 2 is a perfect complement to part 1, and it really illustrates to me how well the two of the brothers work as a duo. I think is one of the things that isn't really discussed enough. As I go through these albums, That is one of the things that's starting to stand out more and more, especially as they age, and I think there's less competition for Jermaine to fight with his brother for the spotlight. Um, and there's some changes coming after this next album. So we'll see if that trend continues because we are just a couple of albums away from Off the Wall, Thriller, and all the other joints where it just becomes a wrap. But we'll get there. Patience, patience. Anyway, but the guitar riff, I know I'm spending a lot of time on this song, but I think it's great. The guitar riff is what makes the record from the opening when it opens, when Jermaine is singing, and then when Michael is part of it as well. I think it gives Michael something to attack vocally, and I think he really answers it with a really great performance. His voice just cut through everything. It doesn't overpower it. It just kind of rides the groove, man. It's so dope. And again, I'm gonna say it again. Michael and Jermaine prove again why they were one of Motown's most underrated vocal partnership. And I don't know. I think people need to pay attention to that. Maybe I'll put together like some of my favorite Michael and Jermaine duo songs. I'm throwing a lot of stuff out here. Hopefully, I remember to do it. But anyway, let's move on. I spent a lot of time on that song, but I felt like it deserved it. Whatever you got, I want. I love the groove on this one. Gave me sort of a Willie Hutch feel because of the bluesiness, the bluesy sort of bounce that's on the chorus as well. Hal Davis did a good job of kind of letting the rhythm section carry this thing. I think Jerry Marcelino and Mel Larson are stronger here at writing grooves than like these pop statements. Remember, they had an issue with that on some of their other albums, and Michael definitely had an issue with that on his solo albums. This they're kind of getting away from that, not overthinking everything and just keeping it to what they are and what they do best, and that's it. So I think once you heard the first minute, you already know what it's about. But it's a good song. She's a rhythm child. I think this one is one that, like, when I say the title, I don't remember it all that well. I think it's a fine album on its own. I think it definitely keeps the momentum of the album moving forward. They sound natural in this space. I think rhythm and movement has always been kind of central to their identity. If you just go back to the very first performance that they did, and I appreciate what Hal did in terms of the arrangements on here without just going overboard. And then you have Dancing Machine. Now, this is interesting because this version is shorter than the one that was on the last album, Get It Together, which again, if you bought this and you be hearing a 3 minute plus version and you get a 2 minute plus version, you kind of might, yeah, you might be a little bit upset, you know. But in terms of sales, you may go back and buy that one because you want the longer version. But I think the question we have to ask ourselves is, did Motown know what they had when Dancing Machine was on that album? I asked that question on Get It Together. It was placed at the very end of that record, almost as an afterthought. And then it got picked up by people in probably at parties, blue light specials and all these rent parties. The DJs probably were playing it in clubs and stuff. And then it made its way to the airwaves. And then after that, it was a wrap. So I don't know. I don't know. I can't find an answer to that, but it has and is one of the biggest hits in America, and it was for 1974. And the groove is just impossible. You got that bass, you got that guitar, disciplined musical arrangement on it. Uh, it's an undeniable record, which I don't understand how their quality control missed it. But um, it's dope. It's dope. And of course, it introduced the robot. Like, come on, man. But it's definitely one of the most one of the a defining record of the Jackson Five's career, and it definitely brought them back. Uh, so that is side one. I think what side one did was it established an identity with ambition, funk, movement, and a repackaging of the hit. And then we get into side two. So let's talk about it. So you have Life of the Party. I thought Life of the Party was interesting because Life of the Party, from what I saw, is this sort of deep cut that was not deep cut. Um, it was a favorite of like people that bought the album. Album cut, I think is the word that I'm looking for. Where it's not a single, it's not one of these big hits, but it's a very popular song from the album that everybody enjoys. It puts things back into motion, like off rip, heading towards that disco, but still staying like in that funk and soul pocket. And I think this again is their style, the choreography, all the other stuff. They were built for this stuff. And Michael is having one of the strongest albums as a vocalist. There's a confidence in it, and remember, he was going through puberty. So in that phase, you can hear him sort of working through that vocally, how to sing certain songs, moving forward, because the songs that he sung when he was younger, I mean, they up there in terms of key because of his voice at the time. But yeah, this definitely became one of the album cuts that the fans embraced, even though the radio ignored it. Not to the point where it became this massive hit, but it was one of those if you know, you know sort of records. What You Don't Know, that's track 6. So I don't know if I mentioned the numbers. So track 1 was I Am Love, track 2, Whatever You Got I Want, track 3, She's a Rhythm Child, track 4, Dance Machine, 5 is Life of the Party, and 6 is What You Don't Know. I think Michael said that was one of his favorite songs on here. I'll see if I can find that. But um, yeah, I think with this one, not really a lot to say. I think the Marcelano Larson team, they wrote exactly what the group needed. Just a simple hook driven record that really felt sort of effortless for them. So it's a good transition record from one to the other. Whew, but this next song, man, If I Don't Love You This Way, woo-wee. Leon Ware. 2 words. 2 words. Leon Ware back at it again. Um, this song just takes its time, man. This is one of Michael's favorite records. I can't remember what the other two are, but I know for a fact he said that this was one of his favorite songs on here. The song takes its time and lets the anticipation build before there's this payoff. The second verse is just as effective, if not more effective than the first. The bass kind of walks downward, before you have this flute and this guitar come in that works its way back towards the chorus. It gives Michael plenty of room to sing. Um, it's it's a great ballad on this album. Man, I love it. I love it. It's a top 2 song for me. And then we're almost at the end where you have track 8, where it all begins and ends with love. From a historical perspective, I think this is a really, really interesting song because all of the brothers had a chance to sing on this song. It is the first Jackson 5 recording where all of them sing in their natural voices on the same record. I think Tito goes first, then you have Jackie, then you have Michael, and then you have Marlon, and then you have Jermaine closing it out. That's it. But yeah. So it's funny because they all damn near sound alike. Even Jackie, because Jackie normally sings in a falsetto, and he didn't do that. But yeah, you get a chance to hear how all the other brothers sing, and honestly, I think they did them wrong, man. Some of them could have took some of them other parts that Jermaine had, on some of the other songs, or worked them into a song or two here or there. But not a bad song. I think it's worth listening to just so you can hear the rest of them sing. I think that's dope. And the last song is "The Mirrors on My Mind," which is track 9. I love the drums on that. The opening drums, it immediately stands out. Definitely sounds like something that uh, it has a hip hop sort of sound to it, but it's definitely ready made for a hip hop sample. After the opening, everything else it doesn't quite hit that mark. But I don't think it's a bad record. It's probably my least favorite on here. But either way I go, I think it works as a closer. Now it doesn't match the closer of Dancing Machine, but what would on here? Maybe I Am Love. I Am Love could have been a good closer, but I think it works great as an opening. So, nevertheless, my side two thoughts are that is less. Um, I don't want to say less immediate than side one. Um, well, they're more balanced on this one. So I think, and that was, I think, the thing is, it created the balance with like the melody and the ballads and vocal focus performances. So, and I think that helped keep the album from being one dimensional, and they avoided that trap because you think about it. Think about this now. Remember, on Get It Together, an argument could be made that it is a very one dimensional album in terms of the pace, not necessarily the songs, but the pace. But this one kind of broke it up a little bit, which either that was by choice or we have to rush back to market. Let's find some good songs that we can do really, really quick and put those songs out, which leads us back to those Michael Jackson records that are on here, the 3 sort of solo joints. And the other 2 songs that he liked, it's actually 2. If I Don't Love You This Way and What You Don't Know, he said that on to Don Cornelius on Soul Train. So that is it. So those are all the tracks, 1 through 9, which brings us to our soundtrack for today. Again, I am not picking Dancing Machine. I spent a lot of time talking about this song, so if you've been listening, you know this is what's going to be the pick. It is I Am Love Parts 1 and 2. Let's get into it. I want you guys to hear it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and put the needle on the track. Where they at?
The eyes of love will watch you as you go from day to day. The hand of love will catch you when you fall along the way. My arms will hold and be with you your whole life through. 'Cause I am love, and I'm in love with you.
Them boys smooth. Look at him.
Come back, lover, come back. This is where you belong. Come back, lover, come back. This is where you belong. Come back, lover, come back. This is where you belong. Come back, lover, come back. Lover, come back. This is where you belong. Please, this is where you belong. Come back, lover, come back. Oh yeah. Oh, come back. Oh girl, please, this is where you belong.
didn't move your feet, something wrong with you. If you didn't move your feet, something wrong with you. If you didn't move your feet, something wrong with you. You heard that? You know what Dancing Machine is. That one right there. Oh my god, that shit is fucking fan. Oh, I should be cussing like that. That's great. That is a great record, and it's a 7-minute song. They did a 5-minute version, but they kind of changed it up a little bit. And I love what they did was in terms of how they split. They still kind of robbed Jermaine a little bit, but they had Jermaine do his part. They had Michael do his little part. So I think that was equal. And then Michael kind of closes the song out on the other part anyway. But I think just doing the whole up tempo sort of dance part was great. You see the choreography was on point. The solos that they had was dope as well. And even to get it together, I was wondering if that was like a reference to like the last album, because that was the name of the last album. But if you're around in the 70s, around that time, 74, like you hear that on the radio, you hear that at a party, like you're gonna move your feet. You can't help it. Like everything was so freaking dope about that. And just seeing Michael move around and dance, Jermaine was in it, the 3-part harmonies they did when Jackie was in there and with the three of them were dancing and moving around. And then those little musical breakdown at the end when they kind of swirling around on their seat and stuff like that and dancing, doing all this. Like, come on, man. That's why I picked the song. That's why I picked the song, and that's why it is the soundtrack of today. It is a top Michael Jackson or Jackson 5 D cup. Trust me. Add it to your playlist. Go ahead. Go ahead and add it to your playlist. Um, I Am Love. They did parts 1 and 2, a very, very, very truncated part of 1, and most of part 2, but it was worth it. And it's so good. That's why it was the soundtrack for today. And again, I stress it again. This is why Michael and Jermaine make such a great duo. On to the closing thoughts. For me, Dancing Machine, I do like Get It Together better. I think Dancing Machine uh, did a good job of following that up. It's like an addendum to Get It Together, simply because Dancing Machine took off. So I think it's a good like sort of transitional record. We have Moving Violation next, which is going to be interesting when we get to that story. But listening to this was like Motown really saying, hey, we got something with the Jackson 5 again. But they made a very, very fatal flaw that they did with a lot of their artists, and they did it again with the Jackson 5, and it is going to cost them. I give credit to Hal Davis. I think he realized where popular music was heading, and he positioned a group accordingly to be right there. I could argue a tad bit ahead of the curve. And Michael is still that guy, but now they're older. And by the time the next album comes out, they're going to be 17 and older. So I think Michael will be 17. They're not the kids anymore, right? And they're seeing that. So there could be this sort of detachment from Michael because he's not that kid you want to peach his cheeks that had all this talent and singing ability packaged in such a small young frame. Nah, he's a 17-year-old kid walking around singing like that. So, he still sounds great. He's still an all-time performer, but he wasn't Michael yet. He was Michael, and then it was Jackson 5, and then he's going to become Michael again. And this is just how the story goes. So, I think with this one, the replay value for me is not as high. Well, speaking of replay value, let's go ahead and get into the scorecard. With the vocals, I have 7 out of 10. Production, we're gonna do 7 out of 10. I think Hal Davis gave the album a polished 74 sound with strong grooves, clean arrangements, steady momentum, even if the songs, a bit formulaic. Songwriting, the Marcelino Larson team, I think they built on what good Get It Together was, and Leon Ware always comes through with a great ballad or two. The hooks are memorable, but there's nothing like any particular breakthroughs, cohesion. I think it works. I think it works. In terms of how they arranged sides one and two, cultural impact was already felt with Dancing Machine from Get It Together. They're just trying to siphon some of that in this album, but it's still undeniable that Dancing Machine was a big hit, and it will be attributed to this album, I believe. But they still had I think that's the next record. I think Life of the Party still had an impact, and I Am Love, I believe, still had an impact. So they had some joints on here. Um, so I think culturally it did its job. And replay value, I don't know why I gave it a 6 out of 10. I think probably because I like Get It Together better. But there are no bad songs on here. I could listen to the whole thing, all the way through. But nevertheless, out of 60, we had a final score for 41 out of 60. I think it's a required listen, you know. Yeah, yeah. So but yeah, man, that is it, man. This is the penultimate, as Nick likes to say when we discuss things, album for the Jacksons on the Motown label. Tune in next time to see what happens with the final album on Motown. But before we do that, we have to discuss Michael Jackson's Motown record, Forever Michael, which was released right before that. So until next time, I'm out. Peace.